Um, just to say one thing about tonight to remember with balanced conditions, you can fall into the qualifying the category of a hidden disability. In UK employment law, you are protected and have better protection because of that, because they would, if an employer treats you unfairly, they're discriminating against your disability. And if you should end up at a tribunal, you could qualify for unlimited or uncapped compensation or damages. And the message tonight is that all employers should know this, so they've got a very strong reason to understand their obligations, the law and the regulations. So just remember that. I'm going to stop waffling now, and I'm going to hand over to the wonderful Tracy Hudson, who is an amazing professional in this area. And please remember each of your questions you may have later, and we've got some pre-submitted questions. Not only will they help you, but the recording of this meeting, they may go on to help many others in very similar positions to yourself. So it's really good of you to share these things, and it's really important we do share, because for every one of us, there's probably hundreds out there in the country that are facing similar challenges and anxieties. So thanks for your being here. And Tracy, I'm going to hand over to you. If I could ask you to just introduce yourself while I dig out the first pre-submitted questions, and then
Okay.
I'm going to read them to you. Okay?
Okay.
So over
Yeah.
to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Um, I'm Tracy. I have worked in HR forever. What I do and what I've done for the last 20 years is I advise small businesses. So, I'm really used to dealing with employers and having conversations with employers where they're calling me and they're saying, "Oh, I've got this person who hasn't been in for the last 3 days, and their attendance is really sporadic, and they seem fine and everything seems and they look okay, and they're just telling me that they don't feel right and they don't know what's going on, and they've got really high anxiety, and what on earth do I do with them?" So I'm really used to kind of dealing with this sort of stuff. I have to actually tell you something before we start any of this. The reason I'm sitting here like a robot is because I've got this fancy new laptop, and every time I move, it kind of zooms in and out and follows me around. And like for a screen of people who all have balance conditions, if you're anything like me, if something's moving, it just makes me feel really sick. So I'm sitting really still, and I'm sorry if I move, but hopefully I won't. I'm going to be in this position for the next hour. So I'm sorry if I look like a robot. I'm just trying to protect you all so you don't feel travel sick. Um,
Right, we'll hold you to it. We'll warn you if you start wandering side to
yeah, or
side.
scream at
I've
me if
got
the camera moves.
I've got the first pre-submitted question for
Okay.
you. And this, some members do not like to give their names. They don't wish to be risking being identified. So this one is anonymous. Um, I'm struggling to find a suitable part-time job locally, but it's hard to find. I can cope with the routine of a part-time job, and I would like to know what my rights are when it comes to my health. I'd rather not disclose my health condition to the employer, as they're more likely to dismiss me. At times I get confused, at times I have memory issues, and I make unintentional mistakes. Any advice will be appreciated. So this is rather strange. This is more pre-employment and then
Yeah.
during employment rather than being in a current situation. But have you any advice on what we should do?
Well, yeah, and that's totally normal because if you've got a health condition and you're trying to get a job, you're going to be really paranoid, really anxious, worried you're going to let people down. They're people you don't know, so they're worried, you'll be worried they're going to judge you. Like it's hot, it's an awful, horrible, anxious time. So I totally get that. I would say um, that you should be honest. I would go to interviews and see how you get on. And then when you're offered a job, Um, or when they ask you about adjustments that you might need, I would just be really honest about what's going on. I think when you try and pretend that you don't have a health condition, whatever it is, whether it's balance or something else, it just increases the anxiety because you're constantly hiding something. And the thing that I know employers appreciate, like they can handle anything as long as they know what they're dealing with. So the thing that frustrates employers is when they just don't know what's going on or they've got no information. So if you're secretive about things, it'll be clear that there's something going on, but your employer's not going to know how to talk to you because you're being quite closed about it. So I find the best way through these things is just be really open and honest. And if that open and honest conversation is, I might be a bit unreliable. Some days I wake up and I can't get out of bed. Other days I'm absolutely fine. But I promise you, when I'm here, I'm going to absolutely work my butt off and be amazing. Like that attitude, I think, is really good because you can work with honesty. As an employer, it's really hard to manage somebody when you don't really know what's going on or you've just got a little bit of information. In terms of like legally, there's a couple of things. So if you tell an employer that you have a disability, and you don't have to say the words disability, if you tell them that you've got a health condition and they don't give you the job because of that, if you do have a disability, you can take them to tribunal, even before you've even got the job, if that's been the reason that you've been rejected. So that's why I say go through the interview, wait until you get offered, and then say, okay, that's amazing. This is some support that I might need. That's the right way to do it. And let me just mention something about disability so everyone's really clear, because I think everybody on this call would qualify. So to have a disability so that you get protection under the Equality Act, you have to have a health condition that impacts your day-to-day living and is likely to last for longer than a year or has lasted for longer than a year. So most people in this group, I imagine, have had their balance condition for longer than a year. Check. It's whether or not it impacts you day to day. And that might vary. So it might be that you go through months, like RuPaul's going through months right now of feeling absolutely awful. Tick, 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 she'd be covered under the Equality Act. 6 months down the line, she might be absolutely fine for a few months. But I think the thing to remember with balance conditions is that, I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, it's the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning. Like I literally roll over in bed. Am I okay? Can I sit up? Oh, yes, I can. Can I walk around? Oh, I can go down and get breakfast. Today's going to be a good day. Like that is impacting me day to day. It's become my normal, but it's impacting me every day. Everything I think about, everywhere we go. Am I going to go to a big supermarket? Can I cope with a big supermarket today, or should I just go to the local Tesco Express? Do I want to go on that walk that's in that field, or shall I just shall I take the dog just, where there's walls and hedges I can hold on to because I don't want to be in a big open space? Am I feeling well enough to drive today? Like, even not work related, just personally, do I want to go on a train? Should I say stay safe in the car? Every decision I make is about, is it going to affect my health? Is it going to affect my balance condition? I'm seeing lots of nodding and somebody's written in the chat 100%, so I know you get what I'm talking about. That, I would argue, impacts me day to day. So um, I would just make an assumption for everyone on this call that you would be covered under the Equality Act, because if you're in this group, it's because it's impacting your life.
Brilliant.
Does that make
Can I
sense?
just absolutely? Can I just follow on? There's a kind of related question from one of our members, Ellie, and she's put here she recently graduated from university. So well done, Ellie. Brilliant to do that. Um, she's got a massive worry about employment. So freshly graduated. Um, she's got the balance condition and how it impacts on her daily life, and that's the balance issues with migraine as well. Because of my condition, I have to have lots of regular breaks and can only do things for so long. Things take longer to do, and there's certain things I can't do or have to do differently. And I can only do so much each day, and it can be very unpredictable. I had to do university studies mostly all from home, so I can't be out for so long. It worries me that I may not be able to earn a living. I'm worried about the impact this will have on my life. Do you have any advice, please? So again, it's a pre-employment, and I think a lot of what you've already said makes a lot of sense. I've just got something to add because I helped a member a couple of years ago with a very similar thing where, and I just want to throw this out there. If you have been suffering with a serious or chronic balance condition, you may not know it, but you're developing superpowers that most people don't have to. The adversity is bringing out a strength in you of character, tenacity, not refusing to be put down. And all of those are brilliant characteristics if you're going to offer working for an employer. Because so many people won't learn those skills because they don't need to. They're not going through the challenges you've been through. And in my world, they're huge positives to offer to an employer to say, not only have I overcome this adversity, in Ellie's case, for 3 or 4 years, I managed to graduate. I've got a degree in fine art, and that I wouldn't let this beat me. And I don't know many employers who are put off by the thought of having strong members of staff, people who've got that character, the common sense, and the extra skills you have to develop to get through life with one of these conditions. So I'm with you, Trace, where you've said don't hide it. I would actually spin it into a positive on a CV that although it's a health condition, here are all the positives I have, especially at Ellie's age, that many of her peers the same age will not have those characteristics that are all brilliant for doing a job. And the final bit is one of the few silver linings of that awful thing called the pandemic was the discovery that we can work from home. There is Zoom video, there are team videos, and there have to be a number of jobs that can be done just as well from home. Can be done. Imagine your output is not measured in minutes. You don't have to engage with a customer in real time every day, but you're doing a piece of work that has to be delivered, let's say, in weekly chunks. There's no reason why you can't do that in your own time at home when you're up to it. And it doesn't matter if tomorrow you can't open a laptop or look at a screen, because there'll be another day when you can. But I know it's not easy to find those jobs. But my view is don't go into job hunting defensive and going, oh my God, no one will ever employ me. I'm just hopeless and they'll think I'm useless. Turn it onto what are real positives. You've dealt with this. You're going after work. You're not content with saying because I'm not just like everyone else. I can't be of use to anyone. So apologies for the rant, Tracy. It's one of my hobby horses there that we develop skills that you never wanted to because you never asked for this condition. But there are benefits you gain in your own character. I'm a better person for having many hairs for 20 years, without a doubt. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but the truth is, I am a better person because of it. Over to you, Tracy.
I get why Ellie is really nervous. Just graduated, the world's a oyster, but actually the world might be her bedroom at the moment. And the thing, as you would say, Kevin, this will pass. Like she will get better. She will try and find ways to manage this so that it gives her more confidence to go out and about and do more things. I think as job applicants are in the strongest position they have ever been in. I am recruiting at the moment. Do you know how hard it is to find people? Like, what all I want to find to join my business are people who have a good attitude, who really want to do a good job and are committed, and I can't find them. And every employer I talk to, all of our clients that I talk to when we come to recruitment, it's where are the good candidates? Where are they? There's nobody out there. So it's absolutely your time. If you're looking for a job, like if she's just graduated, this is brilliant. The timing is brilliant. We are as close to full employment as we've ever been in this country. Employers are desperate to recruit good people. So focus on what you can do, not what you can't do. Apply for jobs. A lot of first interviews are on Teams or Zoom now anyway. So they rarely want you to go in. If they invite you in for a second interview and you can't make it, be honest about it and just say, look, this is an adjustment that I would need to work from home, and I'm really sorry, but this is kind of the reality of my life. Look at all these skills I've got. Please, can we do the second interview on Teams? You've just got to be human and you've just got to be honest about what's going on, but be confident because employers need you. Kevin's absolutely right. Employers are really, really struggling to recruit. So I would be confident with it and just be honest about what's going on. You can go on a job board and you can search for jobs now that are remote jobs only. There's thousands of jobs out there that are remote. And you might want to do that now whilst you build your confidence. And in a couple of years' time, you'll do something where you're going out and about more. But this isn't forever. So just do
Brilliant.
it, in the words of
Good.
Nike.
So Ellie, when you watch this, because Ellie couldn't be on the meeting tonight, just do it. Go for it. Right, we're through the pre-job questions, and it's now the
Kevin,
first
can I
question.
just interrupt and ask
Yeah,
another pre-job question
yeah, of
quickly?
course.
Just
Go on.
generally, can employers, so I was employed in July last year and they were aware of my condition, but I'd already started the job and then um, but it was under condition that I pass a medical questionnaire sort of thing, a medical conversation. Is that kind of can employers do that generally? Because I was really annoyed about the fact that I was asked to do that. I did it, but I was really disturbed by some of the questions that were asked of me as well.
So, doing pre-placement assessments or new starter health questionnaires, you've probably been used to those. That's absolutely fine to ask you to do that. And I support that because actually it can help. It can mean that you get some adjustments before the problems occur. If you know what triggers your symptoms, I think it's really good to be proactive in that way. Um, and it's absolutely fine to do it. What employers can't do is say that a job offer is dependent on the outcome of a health assessment. So that's where they went wrong. It's just their terminology there. You used to be able to do that. Then the Equality Act came in, can't do that anymore. So you can't use health as a reason to not give somebody a job when they have a disability.
Thank you.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
Ru- thank you. Um, so the first question, well, again, anonymous from one of our members. I've been
Mhm.
employed for more than 2 years. I'm not in a job where my balance condition would be any sort of health or safety issue for my employer. It's more of a desk-bound job. I have not told my employer about my condition as I fear that they will see me as a potential future redundancy candidate if they see me as a liability. Should I tell them about my condition? And there's a part question here. If yes, how do I tell them? And should I do anything to follow up after telling them? It's causing me huge anxiety, and I hope you can help me to understand what my options are.
I wonder if the anxiety is because she's hiding something. When she
Yeah,
says it's
yeah, yeah, I would
she, I'm
think so.
assuming it's a she. I don't know why. He,
Well,
they.
don't know.
I wonder if that's what's causing the anxiety though. Just the fact that they're having to hide something. Um, you only get protection if your employer knows what's going on. if your employer doesn't, if you haven't told your employer what's going on and that you've got a health condition, you have no protection under the Equality Act, because you would have to then prove that they made a decision because of your disability that they didn't know about. That doesn't make sense. So I think if you're having symptoms at work or something's going on that's triggering or exacerbating your condition, then my advice would be that you should raise that with your employer and let them know what's going on so that they can help you. One of the things, well, the second question, well, part B of that question was about how do I do it? Just any time you feel it's appropriate, when you're having a chat with your line manager in a one-to-one, or just at the end of a meeting, or can I just have 5 minutes and just say, look, I'm kind of faking it here. I'm faking that I feel well. I don't feel well. I need you to know what's going on. I'm doing everything to the best of my ability, but you just need to know that I'm really struggling at the minute, and this is what I think is triggering things, and I'm doing my best. A good employer will refer you to occupational health. That's the first thing that they'll do. A bad employer will go, and not really be supportive at all. Now, don't be nervous if your employer pulls that face and is like, oh, because that might be nervous. That might be anxiety that they're going to say the wrong thing and get themselves into trouble because they'll know about the Equality Act and think, oh my God, what am I allowed to ask and what am I not allowed to ask? So they might need to go away and think about it and reflect on what you've said and get some advice about how to deal with it. But if they say to you, okay, what do you need? I would say, please, can we get some proper advice? Can we speak to occupational health? And if you work in a small business and you don't have in-house occupational health, there are a gazillion occupational health providers who support small businesses. So there is plenty of opportunity out there. Yeah.
Tracy, apologies, just a quick one. So if they verbally tell their line manager,
Yeah.
should you not follow that by somehow putting it in writing? I can be quite cynical, and
Yes.
I could imagine someone telling someone verbally, and a week later they're being made redundant coincidentally, and
Yeah.
the line manager goes, "What conversation?"
Yeah, that's a really good point. You could just jot it in an email afterwards, or maybe just say something like, I just thought I'd confirm what I've been diagnosed with, or I've just thought I'd confirm what I'm being investigated for. If you want any more information, please let me know. The thing that employers don't often realise is that you can't get funding for an occupational health referral, but if occupational health recommend adjustments, employees, especially if you have a disability, like we all would on this group, you can go to Access to Work and get funding. And Access to Work funding is for all sorts of things. So we've had clients who've got funding for taxis to get their employees to and from work when they can't drive because they're going through phases where they can't drive. Modifications to computer monitors, kit to make your when you do a DSE assessment, just kit to make you more comfortable when you're sitting at your desk. All sorts of different things. What am I thinking about? Not noise defenders. Oh my God, my brain's gone. Brain fog, seriously, don't judge me. Where, so you can't hear anything, so it just kind of cuts off the noise so you can block out noise. So any sort of kit like that. Thank you. Noise cancelling headphones. Thank you, Catherine. So any things like that that your employer might think, oh gosh, I'm going to have to pay for loads of stuff. Google Access to Work. You apply for stuff, your employer doesn't, you do, but that's a way that you can be cooperative with your employer. You can say, look, I might have some access to funding if there's anything that occupational health say I might need. It's not going to cost you loads. It's not like we're talking about installing lifts in the building or anything. It's going to be stuff like that. And actually, occupational health are really, really good at suggesting things like that you might not even have thought about. So I remember one thing that we had was a guy who had vestibular migraines, and occupational health suggested a neck brace. And it was just he got triggered when he kind of slumped in his chair. So they kept having different chairs all the time, and they suggested putting a neck brace on that kind of like lengthens your neck a bit, makes you sit up straight, like you've got books on your head, you know. And it made his symptoms go away. Like it was amazing. And he'd had vestibular migraines for years. And it's just simple things like that that sometimes it's just nice to have another opinion. What was the actual question? I'm waffling on. Shut me up.
No. It was fine. It was about informing them, which I suggest do in writing as well as verbally.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, after the follow-up could be mentioning occupational
Yeah.
health and reasonable adjustments seems to be a
Yes.
key phrase that you need to mention.
Jenny's just
Um,
asked,
Sorry,
if employers can claim back that money for something that they've bought for you as a result of an occupational health report.
No. So if they've already gone and bought it, they can't claim it back. You have to do the application through Access to Work, get the money, and then order the stuff. That's how it works. But there's you can't kind of turn back time, Jenny. Can't turn back time.
Good. No, that's good. Can I turn to the audience tonight? Has anyone got a first question for Tracy who wants to put their own question to her? If you wave or go
Use
off
the
mute and say
icons, or use
hello.
any of the icons, or stick your hand up.
No
Sally.
question.
Sally's got a question.
Hello.
Sorry,
Hello,
where are
I'm
Who's-
here. It's Sally. Do you want me to close off and then come up in a minute?
No, it's fine. So I've found you. It's all right. I've found you. There you go. Go ahead. Thanks, Sally.
Thank you so much. And thank you for welcoming me to this group. And it means so much to know I'm not on my own. I actually cried when I found this website. So it's all very good and very supportive and much appreciated. So I work for a corporate company, and I have done for 3 years now. I've had migraine issues for my whole life, but they kind of manifested into massive vertigo attacks lasting like 6 weeks at a time. And now I have vestibular migraine, triple PD, visual vertigo, and anxiety. So it's all been going on. It's been a bumpy 2.5 years now. I'm very lucky. My company are happy for me to work from home. There's no pressure for me to get back into the office or anything like that. I have just returned. I'm still on a phased return because I had 3 months off at the latter part of last year because my job is so stressful and the stress was triggering to me. So I've gone back. I'm on a phased return. Stress-wise, nothing has changed, but I've kind of recognised that that's down to me. I need to chill out a bit and not allow myself to get overwhelmed, which is always easier said than done, but I do try my best. I've had a conversation with my manager while I was off and I was having my sort of touch base interviews with him. I've already been to occupational health and they have suggested that it might be a good idea for me to drop my hours. So I think on my mention of that, my boss kind of panicked a bit and he was like, you won't be able to do that. The only way you're going to be able to drop them is a job share. And I thought, he hasn't even really asked me how much I want to drop down. Ideally, I just want to drop down 5 hours a week so I can do Monday, Tuesday, have Wednesday off, complete break from the screens and everything like that, and then go back in on a Thursday and Friday. So it's only 5 hours short. He knows that this is on my radar, and I'm aware that when I put a request in, HR will have 2 months to get back to me with a yes or a no. I get all that, that's fine. And for financial reasons, I'm not even going to put the request in until probably April time. My question is, if they come back and say no, because of it's not a business requirement, which I'm hearing a lot through occupational health, if it's not a business requirement, they can say no. So if they say no, what do I do and where do I stand? What's my next step?
Okay, we make sure they don't say no in the
Please.
first place. So when you put your application in, you've got to think of absolutely everything, every reason that they're going to give you to object. So the law on this has kind of changed recently. So it used to be that, well, I won't tell you what it used to be. Now it's not, the onus isn't on the employee to try and think around all the reasons how to make it work, which makes it really hard for employers. So what you're going to do is exactly the opposite. You're going to put in all of the work so that you're providing them with all of the answers. So have a think about what impact is 5 hours a week reduction actually going to mean? Who is that going to upset? Who's going to be having to do that work? How are they going to cope with that? How's that going to be split out? If it's that you're not physically there, what impact does that have on everybody else? Quite often, employers are used to getting these applications and there's no thought has gone into how it impacts everybody else.
Mm.
And that's really frustrating because if you get, honestly, when we get thought through flexible working applications, they usually get approved because you've looked at every single angle and down to all the detail, specific tasks that have to happen on a Wednesday or regular tasks that you're not going to be able to get done because you're not there on that Wednesday or you've reduced your hours. Exactly who's going to do them and how are they going to get done? Think about AI, amazing. Think about how you can utilize tools differently so that it takes you less time to do your job so that you could reduce 5 hours.
Hmm.
Think about efficiencies that you could do. Think about if you're passing something over to somebody else, is there something you could take off them that would take the pressure off them that you could do on the days that you are available? Really just think through every single angle. When they've gone straight to, oh, it's a job share, well, no, it's not, is it? Because you're not going to be able to recruit somebody for 5 hours a week. That's
No.
ridiculous. So it's going to have to be, it's almost more awkward that it's only 5 hours. Because if you
Yeah.
half your hours, you could recruit somebody else and do a job share. So 5 hours is a bit awkward. Be really clear about why you want the Wednesday, because
Yeah.
they're not going to get it. They're not going to get, I've done 2 days at work and I need a break.
Yeah.
They're not going to understand why. So the more context you can put in, the better. And even if this application is 50 pages long, put it all in there. It'll be
Okay.
like a therapy, but really spend time thinking about it and putting as much as possible into that application so that they don't say no. If they still say no after all of that, it's kind of tough. And then we're looking at finding another job somewhere else or just sucking it
Mm.
up and carrying on and dealing with your symptoms,
This
or
is
we
it,
bring a
isn't
tribunal
it?
claim. But either of those are stressful. But just the other thing that's really important is in your application, mention your disability,
Yeah.
mention it as a disability.
And
You know,
occupational health have requested it. Well, they suggested it would be helpful. So
yeah,
I've used that as well.
even though your managers already got it, include a copy of that report with your application so they're getting it
Okay.
again, and highlight the bits in the report that supports this flexible working application.
Okay. That's great.
If you do it and you want me to have a look over it before you submit it, then just email it over to me and
Oh,
I'll
that's so kind.
rip it to pieces and ask you loads of questions.
Okay. No, that would be really helpful. Thank you so much.
That's
No problem.
fantastic support. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Tracy, and good luck, Sally.
Thank you.
Fingers crossed. Let us know how you
Yeah,
get on with that.
absolutely. I'll keep you updated.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you all.
Rosie's written a question in the chat. Rosie, do you want to ask the question yourself if you're up for it?
And Rosie on the spot now.
No?
That's a no.
No, I think
Go on,
that's a no. Okay, I'm going to try.
Yeah.
Bear with me. My job is entirely from home since I got ill, but I'm asked every time I have a manager's supervision if I feel ready to come back to the office. I don't think I'll ever feel well enough for that. Does my employer have the right to fire me because I can't come back into the office? It's company policy that people have to work at least 40% of their hours in the office.
Okay. So, oh, Rosie, I don't know if you can type in the chat. Have you seen occupational health? She replied.
She's yes at the
Yes,
start
at
of
the
the
start of the
illness.
illness.
Yeah.
Okay, amazing. And did occupational health mention in there that you need to work from home? What were their recommendations? Because your employer needs to follow those recommendations because they don't sound unreasonable if part of your time can be at home.
Maybe give Rosie a chance to type that up. Might take her a few minutes. Oh yeah.
Yes, we'll start at least, and then I think they said to play it by ear for the future. Okay, so if you started off that way from following occupational health advice and you don't feel well enough to go back into the office, the next time your manager, she's just said we haven't touched base with Occy Health for a while. Next time your manager asks, just say, could I maybe be referred back to occupational health? Because if you want me in the office, I'm going to really struggle with that. So it would be really good to get some advice on adjustments. And then when you see occupational health, you can tell them what would trigger you, and they will probably give you the same report that you did originally, but that might keep your manager quiet for a while. The other thing to do is ask your manager what the issue is with you working from home. Where is that causing a problem? Because in reality, what the issue is other people going, how come she gets to work at home and I don't? And that's not your problem, that's your manager's problem to manage that situation with other people. So it's worth just kind of saying, can we just talk about what your challenge is with me working from home? And then deal with it in a different way. Does that help?
Hopefully.
Great. Smiley face. Yay.
A great idea with
Very quick on this,
re-referral.
Tracy, because it's come up a couple of times, this about pressures growing for people who've been allowed to work from home to
Yeah.
get back in the office. Is it yes or no if an employer's got a stated policy that everyone's got to work in the office or work 20 hours in the office,
Mhm.
can they ultimately fire you if you won't do that, or they're not prepared to make reasonable adjustments? Can they still go, I'm sorry, you're not adhering to our policy, and it doesn't matter if you've got a disability, you're fired? Is that a yes or no? Or
That's it's a maybe. That would be indirect discrimination. So the process for you to get fired, if we put it bluntly, is that you would have to have your employer has to get medical advice. So that can be occupational health, or it can be from your GP, or it can be from another specialist. They would have a report that says the adjustments that you would need to be able to do your job effectively. Then your employer gets those adjustments. Now, depending on your employer, if they're a large employer, they should be able to accommodate all those adjustments. If they're a small employer, that might not be reasonable. And the key word here is reasonable. So what's reasonable for one employer isn't for another. What's reasonable in one industry isn't in another. So it's very specific to the company you work in, the structure of your business, and the industry that you're in. And it varies massively. So if the adjustments that you need to do your job are not reasonable for the employer, and you're saying, I can't do my job without this, then you can get fired. You would get dismissed for ill health capability. So that's the process that you'd have to go through to get dismissed. If they just turned around to you and said, oh, soz, mate, that's our policy, we're going to have to let you go. Discrimination claim, let me know. I like doing a tribunal application. It's my hobby. Not really my hobby, that's a lie, but I don't know why I said it. I defend tribunal applications all the time.
You can do them with your eyes closed, basically, is what you're saying, isn't it, Tracy? Yeah.
brilliant.
Jenny's got a
Very cool.
question. Jenny's
Next
got a
one.
question as well, and then I'm going to jump in after that, if that's all right. Jenny, do you want to ask your question, or do you want me to read it out? There you go.
Yeah, no, I can ask it. It's really about how far companies or organizations can go with their own sickness and absence policies, as opposed to like the Equality Act or national legislation. If that makes
The companies have to comply with the Equality Act. That comes first over and above anything else. Is there anything specific that you're worried about?
No, it's just that I don't quite understand, because obviously they have, their trigger points and their amount of time you can have off sick, and even reasons that kind of sickness that they think is more acceptable than other kinds of sickness. And I just wonder, like, do they have total scope to just make that up or
No, so they
no.
don't. So if you think about it, think about disability as a discrimination in the same way as maternity. So if you were pregnant and they let your Bradford factor points rock up and then tried to discipline you for your absence when you were on maternity leave or you had morning sickness or whatever it is, that would be discrimination and they'd find themselves in a tribunal. And it works the same with disability. It's just that employers understand it a little bit less. So if you are off and you don't have a disability, so it's stomach bugs, it's headaches, migraines, hangover, couldn't be bothered today, wanted a duvet day, whatever it is, then yes, they can discipline you for that, they can dismiss you for that. But when your absences are all related to your disability, they're not allowed to discriminate against you for that. But what they can do is, and this is why they will refer you to occupational health. Occupational health is critical in all of these examples because if your absences are racking up, they refer you to occupational health to see what adjustments do we need to put into place so that you can maintain your attendance.
Right.
If those adjustments don't maintain your attendance, but they've tried and given it a go, then they can dismiss you or discipline you because they've done everything they can do. They've made adjustments so that it's then fair for you along with everybody else. If that still doesn't work, there's kind of nothing more they can do and you're doing your best. Kind of is what it is, and they can go through their processes.
Okay,
But
brilliant.
they've got to make that effort in a different way than they would for somebody who's just off every Monday with a hangover.
Okay, thanks, Tracy.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm going to jump in with my own question. So I've been off since October, with balance issues, but various other things which are all under in investigation. So I've been in this it was a new job that I started in July last year. So I've worked 3 months and then I've been off sick since, basically, with under investigation, but mainly dizziness and so on. They've been great. They've been really, really supportive. But my one of the things that I was told is that obviously because it was a 6-month probation, they're going to have to extend that probation. I had an occupational health appointment only this morning, and we've agreed because I'm going out of my mind, just stimulation wise, that I'd be happy to do some stuff from home, but my actual job involves driving, going into people's homes, walking around people's homes. I can't get up and down the stairs. Long term, where do I stand? Because short term, obviously, it's okay, and I can do admin work from home. But long term, where do I stand, Tracy?
Okay.
Because
So
I'm still on probation.
yeah, I can see you're worried about the probation thing. The thing with probation is it's for you just as much as it is for them. The only real difference with probation, with you still being in probation versus passing probation, is your notice period. And the reason that employers keep people in probation longer, and sometimes the reason employees want to be on probation longer, is so if it doesn't work out, they can give less notice. And that's all that really is. So I wouldn't get too hung up about the probation thing. It doesn't put you at any more risk of being dismissed or not. I think it's perfectly reasonable for them to extend it because you haven't been there for them to assess you, and you haven't been there for you to decide, is this the right role for me? So I think that's perfectly reasonable. If I was advising them, that is what I would say, just extend probation. So don't read anything into that because I think that's perfectly reasonable. Longer term, shorter term, it sounds like they're great and they're really supporting you, which is brilliant. Longer term, the role might not be right for you. And that's just the reality of where you're at the minute, that this role might not be right. But it's what is longer term. It's been 3 months. That feels like a lifetime to you right now. Let's see where you're at by the end. When they sit in another 3 months and talk about what we're going to do about your probation, it might be a different conversation because if you think about it kind of as a lifetime, your lifetime with them half of it, 50% of it, you haven't been there. So if then we've got another 3 months, that's, I can't do that maths. What, 75%? No, that maths isn't right. You guys figure it out. A chunk, a significant chunk, you haven't been there. So it would be reasonable for them, if you've gone to occupational health and they've done everything to support you, it would be reasonable for them to say, look, this isn't going to work because this is the role we need you in. And you're floating around doing something over here because we're trying to support you. But the reality is that this job needs to be done. So it might be that they have that conversation with you. It sounds brutal, but I'm honest. That might be the reality, that they have that conversation with you, but use this time between now and then to demonstrate how much you can add value to that business without being difficult. Because if the stuff
And
that you can do, you do well, and you're accurate and you're reliable and you're doing it from home, they might find a role for you because
Yeah.
they're not
So
going to want to lose good
Tracy,
people, because you can't
yeah,
find good people.
yeah,
is it not a fair point that nearly all of our balance conditions are so unpredictable?
Yeah.
RuPaul's had various balance things on and off for quite a few years, but this is a huge, unusual flare-up. Is it not quite within RuPaul's right to say, guys, this could be over in a week or a month? We don't know. And that, 'cause I think that hope that it could be gone, and it really could be gone, RuPaul, that hope
but
for the employer, because remember, RuPaul, the employers know nothing about our conditions.
yeah,
They've no
but
reason to.
but just to say that, I don't necessarily know that it is purely all the balance, issue.
Yes.
It could be something else, which is all under investigation. That's my problem at the moment, is that I don't actually know whether it is my, balance condition that's causing a lot of the issues that I've got at the moment, or if it's something else. But I'm being, under investigation with lots of different people, but it's that long waiting period, etc.
The thing is, you're
But
doing absolutely the right thing. If you're sharing that with them so that they know that you're
absolutely.
you're not just sitting wallowing and doing nothing about it. They know you're doing everything in your power to get well, and you're doing your best work when you can, in whatever way you can. That attitude is amazing, because you would be surprised at the number of people that don't have that attitude. They shut down. Like, I'm talking from with my HR brain in here as a HR advisor. Employees will shut down, they'll be suspicious, they won't speak, they'll say, I've got a medical appointment and you can't ask me what it is. It becomes really hostile, and you are the opposite of that, and that is perfect. That's what they need to hear, and I think that's probably why you're getting so much support. So I think you've just got to keep doing what you're doing. If something changes, amazing. If you get diagnosed with something and they give you a pill and you're great, happy days.
Yeah,
Drink the magic drink, whatever it is.
absolutely.
RuPaul,
Yeah,
just remind them it's not like having a broken leg.
yeah,
Broken leg,
yeah,
you know how many weeks, almost to the day, you're going to be walking again. This isn't like that. And
yeah.
people,
They've been.
as
To be
Tracy
fair, they
said,
have been really, really supportive
yeah,
so far.
and it's getting great people to work for you these days is getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
So
Often can I
use
just
that.
add in there, because sorry, Kevin, you made a really good point. In the occupational health referral form that your employer sends to occupational health, there will often be a question that is, how long do you think this is going to last? And so make sure that when you see occupational health, they answer that question. And the answer to that question is, we have no idea. This is potentially a lifelong condition. They shouldn't, the good occupational health companies shouldn't say whether or not it's a disability. So don't be concerned if they don't mention that, because they shouldn't. Employers want them to, so sometimes they do, but it's not their job to identify if it's a disability. It's HR's job to identify that. But make sure they answer that question in their report. And what you also have the right to do, sorry, I've just realized I'm pointing like I'm telling you off, RuPaul. I'm not. It's weird because I don't want to move. What was I saying? Oh my gosh. Oh, that was it. So when you get the occupational health report, because you will see it, tick the box to say that you want to see it before they send it to your employer, you can add comments to that report. So you could add a comment. Occupational health can't change the report because of anything that you say, but they can add to it. So if the occupational health advisor hasn't mentioned that this is potentially a lifelong condition, it impacts you day to day, and they don't know when you'll recover, then make sure that they put that in the report or add a comment to say that it hasn't been covered. This point hasn't been covered. My opinion is that I would be covered under the Equality Act because this is a disability, because it impacts me day to day, and I don't know when I'll recover. You can put details in about you have flare-ups. I think somebody put in the chat, you have flare-ups, they usually last 2 weeks. You have flare-ups, they usually last 6 months and they're gone. You have a flare-up and usually it's awful for 2 months and then it eases. And these happen once every 5 years. Whatever it is personal for you.
Thank you, Tracy. I'll probably be in touch.
Okay.
Got a question from Krishna. It's just way above my head at the moment. It's just kind of like, yeah, that's a lot to take in.
It
But
is.
I'll probably come back to you.
It's a lot to take in when you're feeling awful.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, though. I really appreciate it. Krishna says she's sorry, she's putting her little girl to bed, so she can't talk on video. She works at a primary school as a one-to-one support assistant. She was off for 3 months last year, from April till July, went back to work from this academic year, August 2024, and has had 4 days off since then. And there were 3 separate absence periods. This has hit triggers on the attendance policy. I now have a formal written warning on my record, which I've appealed and awaiting the appeal hearing in February. I have only just had occupational health last week. Should I take this report to my appeal hearing? She says, I've seen the documents for the appeal hearing, and my employer has stated I have had more sickness absences, not just for vertigo. 1 moving day in February 2024 and half a day off for my baby being poorly. Are they allowed to include these 2 as part of my sickness absence, even though it's not sickness and the employer allows you to have these days off?
Okay, so the one for the baby being poorly, that you are entitled to time off for dependents. It's often shortened to TOFD, TOFD, time off for dependents. That is for emergencies only. So you can't book a holiday and call it time off for dependents. It's unpaid, it's for emergencies. So your baby being sick and not being able to go to their normal childcare is an emergency. In the same way, the school is shut because of the snow is an emergency. Teacher training day, not an emergency. So anything that you can plan for is not an emergency, but they cannot discipline you for that. That would be discrimination, sex discrimination, because she's had to have the day off because she's a mum, and it's always the women that have to have the days off with the kids. Not that I'm better. Let's not get me on that. What was the other part of the question?
I think it was the original that it's triggered the time off that she's had has triggered.
Oh yeah, so it's not all disability stuff.
Yeah.
So they have to discount anything that links to your disability. That would be in itself an adjustment, and I think a reasonable adjustment, because the absence doesn't seem excessive. So the timing for the occupational health report is great because that's happened since you've had your warning. Now you've got an occupational health report, so you have fresh evidence to take to your appeal hearing. So yes, certainly I would submit it to whoever's doing your appeal in advance, get them to read it and discuss it at the appeal hearing, and please let us know how you get on.
Good luck.
Great.
with that.
Rupal, do you just want to have a rest while I read a
That's
couple
great,
of
thank you.
pre-submitted questions? We go. So bring them up. So interesting one here. A member says, after seeing a past meeting recording on employment rights, that would be starring you, Tracy, reading the website page on this issue, that's on our website, I think I may have been unfairly treated, unfairly dismissed due to my balance problem. This was over 3 years ago now. Is it too late to do something about this? Is there a time limit? And if I could do something, what would I need to do?
Okay.
So 3 years ago.
Yeah, too late. You've got 3 months to bring a tribunal claim.
Okay.
So there's nothing that you can do about that. You've got 3 months to bring a tribunal claim. And the first thing that you do if you're thinking about doing it is you get your company procedures, check that you've done everything, you've followed your internal company procedures in terms of appeals and things. If you've done that, then you go to ACAS, acas.gov.uk. I would say if you go on the ACAS website, it's full of really helpful information, but make sure you're actually on the ACAS website because there are so many scam websites. It's the gov.uk one. Go on
There's
there.
Trace, in the chat, I put a link for acas.org
Oh
about
gosh,
the
yes, org.
so
That'll do.
that's the correct website, I think, for ACAS. Hopefully.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, do what Kevin says.
That's good. But the important bit here is 3 months, which is not a long
3 months.
time. 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's good. That answers that one. Next one. I have a job that requires good balance, climbing ladders, etc.
Oh
Am I
God.
obliged to tell my employer about my balance problem, or am I breaking any laws if I don't?
Yes. Yes, tell them. Get off the ladder, get on the ground.
Yes.
I had to get someone else to put up our Christmas lights. There's no way I'm going up a ladder.
Yeah.
Yes, tell them. You've got to be really careful because in terms of health and safety laws, you have to make sure that you're safe at work. You have an obligation to keep yourself safe and your colleagues safe. If you fall off a
Yeah.
ladder and land on somebody else, you could find yourself liable because you haven't shared your disability with your employer and it will come out. So I absolutely would be sharing that with them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you feel fine and you just do it and you're fine and it just makes you feel a little bit nauseous, but you can just do it, you crack on, but make sure you tell your employer and then they will do appropriate risk assessments to make sure that you're safe and your colleagues are safe.
Yeah. Makes sense. It reminds me a little bit about a question we get asked a lot about, can I drive or not with a balance condition? It's kind
DVLA,
of
ask them.
yeah, but it is kind of a similar answer that if you believe you're safe driving, you probably are. But if you get incredibly bad vertigo attacks and you can't control the vehicle, most importantly, you're a danger to yourself and others. So it's kind of similar, I think, with the employment scenario.
Yeah,
If you feel a bit queasy, but you can still go up and down a ladder, there's not a danger. But if there's a danger you might fall off, you can't keep doing it.
the thing is, get the responsibility off yourself. Take the worry and the anxiety off yourself. Share it with your employer. Tell them you think that you're fine. If that's true, they will do a risk assessment and they will determine if you're safe. And then if you have an accident and they've put things into place to make sure that you're safe, it's nobody's fault. You have an accident, you had a vertigo attack, whatever it might be. But
Brilliant.
just you need to be able to just sleep at night and you'd feel awful if something happened to somebody else because you were trying to struggle through something that you really shouldn't have been doing in the first place.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good answer. Last pre-submitted question.
Mhm.
Working for the same company for over 10 years in pretty much the same job. Due to my balance condition, I now find noise in the working environment and the bright lights a big problem. I know the problem is down to me and not the environment I'm in. Can I ask to be given a different job in a different location of the business that's more suitable for me? Or will they simply fire me and say, I can't work at my current job?
You need to see occupational health. That's what
Yeah,
you need to do. When it's
reasonable
noise
adjustment.
and light sensitivity, there's so many things that can happen to make a difference to how you feel. So it might be that you don't need a different job. But I would say referral to occupational health. If your employer doesn't have one, there are plenty of private ones and your employer will pay. If your employer says, oh, that's going to be really expensive, it's about 450 quid. The pricier ones are up to £500. that is affordable for any employer. So make sure you see occupational health. They will give advice on whether they can make adjustments to your job or whether you could be moved to a different area. If you're in a small company, being moved to a different job might not be realistic. So you might end up getting dismissed if they can't accommodate you in that role and it exacerbates your symptoms. You might end up losing your job. If you're in a larger company, then it's more likely that they would be able to find a different role for you that's more suitable. But occupational health is the key. We need to get an occupational health sponsor, don't we? That's what we need.
I'll work on that.
Can I
I'll
just
work on
Ruth,
that.
have you got some more comments
Yeah,
from the
there are
chat?
questions. Richard's been waiting for ages. Richard, just bear with me. I just want to make a comment about that. I worked for a big company, and then the very first time it happened, access to work, they moved my desk position. I had blackout blinds. It was an open office. I was given sort of equipment for the computer, so the bright lights. This is the BBC, and also in the studio while I was presenting, they changed all the lights so that they could be dimmed. I had lots and lots of things happen to make my job easier to do. So I just wanted to add that. Richard, do you want to ask your question?
All that stuff you've just said there can all be paid for by access to work.
Absolutely, it
Small
was.
businesses.
Yep.
Richard,
Go for it, Richard. Do you want to ask it?
No, I was going to say, if you have vestibular migraine and triple PD, if you explain that to your employee or your manager, how are they going to know what it is when your GP doesn't actually know what it is?
so we don't need to worry about diagnosis so much. What we need to think about are symptoms, and this is how occupational health look at things. So when you speak to your employer, they're not going to have a clue what you're talking about. They're not going to understand it. So get them to refer you to occupational health. Occupational health don't care if you've got a diagnosis. What they care about is what your symptoms are and how your condition impacts you and impacts your ability to do your job. Because you could have two people who have vestibular migraine, for example. One person, they could be triggered by lights. Another person, it could be triggered by sound. We all respond in different ways, have our different triggers, and our symptoms have different severities. So that's why occupational health, you'll find they're not that bothered about what your diagnosis is. They just want to know how you're feeling and what your symptoms are, because their job is not to diagnose you or to treat you. Their job is to advise your employer on how to look after you in your job. That's what their job is. So does that answer your question, Richard?
Yeah, it does, yeah. Thank
Can I,
you.
can I also add, like, yeah, just in terms of a big plug for Life on the Level, this is a great opportunity also for colleagues, friends, families to be directed to Life on the Level and previous videos as well. If people do want to find, get a better understanding of some of the conditions, point them in our direction,
Yeah.
because there's loads of great videos and previous sort of meetings. Catherine and Dorothy, I think, have both got exactly the same question, just written differently. Do one of you want to ask it? Dorothy? Catherine? Dorothy, go for it.
Hi Tracy.
Hello.
Just I think you made a point that you said it was HR's responsibility to maybe indicate if you had a disability or not. But it was put in writing in a letter from Occupational Health that it would only be a tribunal that would make that decision.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I don't know if we have time, but I just wondered where the distinction would be. Maybe this isn't a question there's a simple answer to. What would be the difference between a long-term health condition and a disability, and where do you draw the line? Is it how much it impacts on you, or?
Yeah, it's how much it impacts you day to day. So you might have a long-term health condition and you manage the symptoms and it doesn't impact you day to day. People, for example, MS. You can be diagnosed with MS, but it has no impact on you day to day. It's a progressive condition. It might do in the future, but it has no impact on you day to day in the shorter term, and that shorter term might be 10 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it depends on how it impacts you. That determines your protection under the Equality Act. In answer to your question about who makes the decision on whether or not it's a disability, there was a case recently, I've forgotten the name of the case, where Occupational Health put in their report that they believe that the employee would be covered under the Equality Act, and the employer made a decision to dismiss the employee on that basis, or it might have been the other way around. I can't remember, that they weren't covered, and so they made a decision to dismiss because they didn't have protection. I can't remember what happened. Anyway, the tribunal didn't like it because it is not occupational health's responsibility to make that decision. HR or an employment lawyer should be looking at that employee, looking at how it impacts their lives day to day, and then making a decision on whether the reason to make a decision on that person's employment or job status or whatever it might be, that's HR's responsibility. It's employment law responsibility. It is not, yes, ultimately, an employment tribunal will look at the case and decide, did HR make a reasonable decision there or not? Like they would make a reasonable decision to dismiss, make a reasonable decision to reduce their pay, to make them redundant, to change their hours. Of course, it's ultimately a tribunal's decision. But in the moment, when you're trying to make a decision on what you do with an employee, you can't go to a tribunal and ask them to make a decision. The business has to make a decision, and where they should get their advice from is HR, not occupational health. Occupational health should not be providing that advice.
Right. And so sorry if I could just go back to the difference between a long-term health condition and disability, because I think, if your condition is fluctuating, then obviously some days you are worse than others. And that's where I think the difficulty becomes. So some days or most days, you can suffer from maybe fatigue or imbalance, but then on other days, but which you can cope with to some degree and complete a normal working day. But then on other days, it's much more debilitating, and you would struggle to complete a normal working day. And I think that's the sort of difficulty about, well, which category, that I don't think they're sometimes easily sort of in category, how do you put them in one category or the other, I think.
You don't, Dorothy. You don't need to
Right.
put it in a category. All you need to think about is whether or not you're covered under the Equality Act, and whether you want to call it a long-term health condition or you want to call it a disability. It doesn't matter. The thing is, does your condition affect you day to day, and is it likely to last for longer than a year? I would say, from what you've just said, it affects you every day, day to day, because one day you're fine and the next day you're not, and you can't predict that.
Mm.
So, and it's particularly difficult with balance conditions because we don't get any warning. There's no warning signs. You just kind of fall off the planet out of nowhere. And so it's constantly on your mind all the time. I might be projecting, that's just me, maybe. But so I think for balance conditions, and as you've described it, one day you're okay and you go into work and you're fine, and the next day you're on the floor and you don't know what way is up. I think that is a perfect example of a disability. And I think if you explained that to somebody like in my position, or somebody that's advising your employer, they'd say, Dorothy's covered under the Equality Act because this is impacting her day to day and it's lasting for longer than a year. We're not talking a broken leg. That impacts you every day because you've got to drag that leg around for 6 weeks whilst it's in a plaster cast. But it's not lasting longer than a year. So it's not a disability. Things like, oh, I need a hip operation, I'm in pain all the time. It's not likely to last for longer than a year because you've got your operations scheduled, haven't you? Saying that, NHS might last longer than a year if it keeps getting rescheduled, but you get my point.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Dorothy. Faye has got a question about phased return to work.
Okay.
Go for it, Faye.
Oh yeah, hello. Yeah, I'm Faye.
Okay.
Hi. I've just recently had my level 2 meeting at work. I'm a teaching assistant. I've been off since September, having a pretty dreadful time, balance problems. I still am waiting for appointments with the NHS, so I haven't really got a diagnosis. So I'm kind of just struggling on. I've been told that I need to start my 6 weeks phased return soon. I'm kind of running out of time. And I'm being asked by HR how I'd like that to work, which is really difficult because I've pretty much been at home. I mean, I go out for walks every day if I can, actually, so not every day, but I'm not going to busy, noisy places. And I don't know what it's going to be like at all. I don't know whether this is going to work out. And knowing what I should say, what my suggestion should be for how this will play out is really hard to plan. I suppose I'm just wondering, can I ask just to go back for a couple of hours a day and sort of report back to them on how I've got on and what I think the difficulties are going to be? Can I do that, or do I need to be clearer? And how would anybody be clearer when they've been off work for so long?
Okay, question 1, have you seen occupational health?
Yeah, so I have seen I spoke to them on the phone at a couple of weeks in, and that was a time when I was taking medication and I was doing a lot better than I was then told to not take the medication, because it was hindering me relearning my balance. So I've gone through a horrible time for months, but I'm still probably not as well as I was when I had that assessment. So although some of the suggestions, like don't go up ladders and don't do CPR, which I think was pretty much the gist of it, that probably still applies. But I think, if it was to be redone, there would be more to it, I suppose. But I don't think they're going to be able to tell me what the difficulties are going to be. I mean, I know like the noise is going to be a problem, lights are going to be a problem, the sort of busyness and me having to physically move quickly is going to be a problem. But to what extent, until I'm there, I think it's really hard to say.
So why don't you, I think you've had a great idea. Why don't you ask them if you can go in for a day? They don't have to pay you if you aren't a teacher, you'll be on sick pay, will you? You got
I'm
sick
on sick pay, yeah, at the moment. Yeah.
So just keep it as a sick day, but ask if you can just go in for a day. And then you get up in the morning, try and go in for a day, but take in all the things that you think would help, sunglasses, whatever it might be that you think might help, and just go in for a day and see how you get on. Note everything down, that went wrong. It might be okay, but you know yourself better. So note what triggered you. Was it walking down that corridor? Was it just going to that particular room that's got really bright lights? Like try and just really think about what it is that's triggering you to feel bad. And then after you've done that, ask them if they'll refer you to occupational health again so that you've tested to see what you can do. Now you've got an idea of what might trigger you when you go in every day. You'd like to talk that through with an expert so that when you come back, the reason I'm saying get advice on it, and it might be that you don't want to talk to occupational health, it might be that you want to speak to a doctor. GPs are pretty useless with this stuff, a specialist or somebody, to see if they can give you some advice on what you do and how you come back. And then you could do a phased return. And that phased return might be that you come in and do an hour for the first week every day. But if they're saying to you, come on, do your phased return, and they're giving you all the control and the power over that, that's amazing. Let's just draft whatever it is that we want because they're insisting that you do. So it might be an hour a day. It might be that in your phased return plan, you want to build in flexibility. So you might start off an hour on Monday, and then you might decide you're going to do 2 hours Tuesday and 3 hours Wednesday, and you just have to build up. But I think you're absolutely right, practice for a day because you don't know how the drive in is going to affect you. You don't know how waking up to an alarm in the morning is going to affect you.
This is it. The whole routine of it is going to
Yes.
be quite alien because it's been quite a long time. I mean, I'm not driving. I don't really know at what point I can try that. You know, I don't think that's yet for me. So I'm going to
Okay.
need to walk, which is going to be, you know, a thing to getting that, you know, it's going to be a good 20-minute walk before my day starts. So I think I just need to sort of act that out, try it out.
Have a look, Faye, at Access to Work, because it might give you funding to get a taxi into work.
Right.
So just have a look at Access to Work and see what they've got, because that's something that you have to apply for. I just often tell our clients, get them to do it, get them to apply.
Yeah.
And it might be that you need an occupational health report to support that Access to Work application. So that's another way to get you back in front of occupational health.
Yeah.
Tracy, just on Faye's case, but this I think could apply to a lot of people. Is there any merit where in this example, if I was Faye, I would be going back to her employer saying, all balance expert clinicians agree that stress and anxiety is a trigger for even more symptoms and the problems that balance conditions cause. And this process is likely, if I'm not allowed to do a first couple of hours, just the thought of being thrust into a program that I have no idea what stress and illness this is going to make me ill before I do it. Can that not be used as leverage or a real argument that stress is food and drink to any balance condition? So this process, even though it's not meant to, is likely to cause stress if Faye is not allowed to suggest these small incremental steps. Would that be legitimate, or could they just ignore that and say, tough, this is the process?
The thing that's really difficult with public sector is process. We cannot divert from our process. So it might work, that might work effectively in a smaller employer, but I imagine in a public sector or larger employer, they're going to want to see medical evidence. They're going to want an expert to say stress will make this worse, rather than Faye saying stress will make this worse. So quite often you'll see in occupational health reports that that stress will trigger or what's the word? Make worse. What's the fancy word for make worse? Exacerbate. Thank you. Exacerbate a condition. So that will quite often be said. In GP reports, that will quite often be said. So it's a really good idea for Faye to get some expert advice to help her to navigate how she can reduce her triggers and symptoms going back into work in this way.
And again, it just comes back to this point that never assume an employer, big or small, has the first idea about balance conditions.
And they can't, but
Well,
it's
none
the
of us did
symptoms they need
until
to
we got our own.
understand.
None of us gave balance the second thought because it just happened. But as soon as you get it, you then really get it. And all of us know this. It starts with the physical symptoms, but the mind games follow on pretty quickly after that. And by that, I mean the anxiety, the grieving, the depression, the anger, all of that just comes as part of the package. Your employers won't know this. And even if they ignore it, even if they're a huge civil service, I would still make a point of saying, this is going to cause me further harm if we can't do it in a sensitive way. And any members come to me, I'll find you any number of balance experts who'll be happy to say stress is a trigger. Stress will make your symptoms far worse. And that anxiety, that the mind games sitting there weeks ahead of when you know you've got to make that return, you are pretty much sure to be very unwell on that day. So
How long have you, is this a flare-up of a condition, or is this new?
So I've had problems with balance before, but I think I probably had about 6 months with no symptoms at all. And then, yeah, this last period has been really bad. I haven't felt able to go back to work, like I say, since September. So, you know, I do feel better than I did, but I regularly have dips and it's not predictable. And what it's going to be like to return to work is just an unknown entity. But I think I've kind of part of how I'm dealing with this is sort of accepting that I don't know how this is going to play out, and I'm trying to be okay with that, because no amount of going over and over it in my head, trying to think back of the sort of things I was doing before and what that might feel like now, is an impossible thing to do, because my head's in a totally different space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe just try doing the walk to school. Like,
Yeah.
just try that as a starting point. Just do the walk to school, see how that feels. Walk home.
Yeah.
Maybe do the walk to school and then go into supermarket and then walk home. You know what I mean? Just kind of.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with supermarkets because they're my triggers.
Yeah, no, and me, you know, they're bright and they're noisy. There's too many
Stuff
lights.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck, Fern. Good luck.
Thank you.
Good, Rupal. Any more in the chat, or are we?
No, just
Yes,
comments about
yes.
access to work and the long lead times, really.
Yeah.
And Eve says if you say you're in work though, or about to start a job, then if you make that clear on the application, they have to prioritize it. But I do agree, the delays are really long. 9 months for her daughter's application. If they prioritize it, then it's usually around 4 weeks. She was told. This is access to
Yeah.
work.
That sounds about right.
Wow.
I think mine usually come back in about 6 weeks or so. I wouldn't expect to be waiting for months though.
Dorothy's raised her hand. Dorothy, if you want to unmute and
So this
ask
is
away.
this is a situation that actually happened. So very unusually, a colleague and I both have the same diagnosis of Meniere's, which is a bit bizarre because it's meant to be relatively rare. And there was one occasion where, so we work in a team of 3, and there was one of the team on annual leave, and I was working from home because I had COVID and testing positive. And our line managers demanded that she come into work, even though she had an agreement to work from home. But they still demanded that she come into work, even though she wasn't feeling well. And she explained that to them. They overrode that. And she was forced to come into work. Can they do that?
No one can force you to do anything. You can choose what you want to do. So they can insist you come into work, but if you say to them, I am not well enough, I'm going to be absent today, like they're not going to come round to your house, manhandle you, shove you in a van and bring you into work. So they can threaten you with disciplinaries and things like that, but that would be you know, then that means that they're kind of up for a fight then, and they're going to find themselves in tribunal, and that's not where we want to be. You know, employers are scared of tribunals, and I think, and they are terrified. Employers are terrified of employees. That's what they're terrified of, because they don't want to get it wrong and they don't want to go to tribunal. So they can be really persuasive and, come on, you'll be fine, come in, we need you, this is going on, you've got to come in today, we really need you. That's kind of normal language of a desperate employer who needs their staff in, but they can't force you. If you're not well enough, then don't go in. You have to protect your health first. That's the reality. If employers are getting to the point that they're putting so much pressure on you and forcing you to come into work when you're not well, then I would be looking at going and seeing your GP and getting signed off sick. And that can be stress, that could be work-related stress, because your condition is being exacerbated by your employer putting pressure on you. It could be whatever, but GP trumps employer. So that would be my advice if they really are putting pressure on. But We are human beings. We can do what we want to do when we want to do it. So don't let anybody put pressure on you to go into work if you're not well. Health comes first.
I mean, it was actually my colleague actually who coincidentally has the same diagnosis, but she did come in actually. She felt she had no choice to come in, and then almost immediately had to go home because she was simply not well enough to be there.
And the issue, so something that we haven't talked about, and oh, do I even want to open this? Yeah, well, anyway, I'm going to give Kevin something to Google later and rant about next time. Is that we could they're leaving themselves open there to personal injury claims. So if the employer's forcing you to do something that makes you unwell and exacerbates a health condition, which leads to the point that you cannot work and therefore don't get paid, this is where personal injury claims come from. So, you might think personal injury claim is, oh, they fell off a ladder at work and broke their leg, couldn't work for 6 weeks, so they put in a personal injury claim to get that money back. Same applies if your employer's putting you in a position where it's damaging to your health and then you can't work and you lose pay, and so that's a whole other world that we haven't even talked about. And it happens rarely, but where you've got a really difficult employer who really is like that and quite a bully, then personal injury claims might be something to consider. Kevin has already Googled it and put it in the chat. Look at that for efficiency. I mean, I'm not advocating that we all start bringing personal injury claims, because that's not what we want. What we want is supportive employers who will keep us in our jobs. But when you have a real employer who's difficult and it just doesn't, it's going to go horribly wrong. Don't think you don't have options. That's all I'm saying.
Thank
And the
you.
other thing, can I just say one more thing that I've just thought really quickly as we've opened that floodgate anyway? If you have a mortgage, you will have insurance with your mortgage. Look at Kevin Googling right now already. You'll have insurance with your mortgage for legal expenses specifically for your employment. So have a look at that for any of you who have a mortgage, because you might be able to get some legal advice, but also they might be able to represent you for things like personal injury claims. Or certainly if you've been dismissed from your role, made redundant or anything like that, you should be able to use that insurance policy, and they would pay for a solicitor or at least legal advice to represent you to bring a claim. So I think a lot of people don't know that. Deborah's just put in the chat, and your union. Yes, spot on. A lot of people aren't in a union. So when you're not, then look at your mortgage.
Brilliant. Very good. I think we're about there, Rupal. I don't think there's any more.
I think that's it. Can I just ask an additional question with regards to what Faye was talking about and phase returns and so on? If for whatever reason you agree a phase return and you're not well enough once you've started that, what's the process then? Like, do you then go back? So, okay, there's two questions. One, before I forget. So the first question is, I was told that does your the occupational health report supersedes whatever your GP says. Is that true? Question one. Secondly, what is the process for if you've been off sick, phase return, but you're not well enough to work? Do you then need to get another sick note? How does it all work?
Okay, so GP versus Oc Health. A GP gives advice to you as a whole. Occupational health give advice to your employer to support you in your job or to determine whether or not you're fit to work, which is why Oc Health trumps GP. This is why occupational health is so important. The question about phased return, if you start a phased return and you just can't do it, you're not well enough, then it might be that you step back and do less, or it may be that you just go off sick entirely and you might have to start a different phased return. The point of a phased return is to ease you back into work. So it's not about powering through you back into work, it's easing you back into work. So you just do it bit by bit by bit and see how you get on. If it doesn't work, you go back a step. If it really doesn't work, you go back off sick. That makes sense?
Yeah, and you start the whole process again. Okay, this. Oh gosh, I think there's some more questions. Or am I getting this wrong? Is that a question from Julie? Is that right? Julie, where are you?
Yeah, Julie
Hi,
Beaumont.
sorry, it's not a question. It's just I've just put something on
Oh,
about some
sorry.
advice that I got from Tracy
Share it. Share
about
it.
working from home and getting pressured into coming back into the office. So I've just put that on because I went to OHU and then they did actually back me up about working from home. So Tracy obviously advised me to tell my manager to stop pressurizing me, words to that effect, and it actually backfired on my manager, and I am actually working from home more, not as much pressure on, and just going in when I'm able to. So thank you.
Excellent.
Yay.
Great.
I am
Thanks
very
for
wise,
sharing.
Julie. I am very
Just-
wise.
Very
Wow.
quickly, Catherine just wants reiteration, Tracy, of the question I asked earlier. Tracy, yeah, clarification. Did you say that OH trumps a GP?
OH trumps a GP because a GP is looking at you as a whole. OH is looking at how you do your job, how effective you are in your job, and how safe you are in your job. And it's very, very specific, which is why, from an employment law perspective, OH trumps GP.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Just one thing to add there, Tracy, just everyone be aware, most GPs in their 5 years of training do 5 hours on balance conditions. So GPs sometimes are not the greatest source of wisdom and knowledge about balance conditions. I don't know. I mean, in these day and age, we're told go and ask for a second opinion. So if you go into a GP and they're trying to gather evidence and you're finding they're just staring at their computer screen and don't seem to have a clue, bear in mind most members report when they first go to a GP, they're told they've got a virus, go home and it will get better in 2 weeks. And then several years later, people are still struggling. So I'm just throwing it out there that don't always accept the first GP you see, especially if you're in a multi-GP practice. There can often be in a practice with several doctors, a doctor who specializes in such as balance. But just keep the message tonight that comes through to me is if we're not going to fight for ourselves, no one else will. And you might have an employer who loves bullying and intimidation. So to me, get the gloves off and intimidate back where we need to. But do not take it lying down. You're unwell, you've got a health condition. People shouldn't get away with treating you unfairly or illegally. So I hope that comes through tonight. And where you need help, Tracy she should have wings and a halo because she's an angel here helping all our members for years now. Please make a note, email me, kevin@lifeonthelevel.org. Email me first so I can then put this through to Tracy. And people watching this video, it only applies to members. You've got to be a member and then you can get this wonderful advice and guidance from Tracy. I think we're about there, Rupal.
I would agree. Yeah.
So just very quickly, don't forget Saturday, the 8th of Feb, it's the regular meeting. Wonderful Michaela Burton, vestibular rehab physio, and she's going to importantly give you advice what you can do at home if you can't get to see a specialist about rehab. And then, would you believe we have with us today, I'm just going to introduce you to Emily. Emily there, complete with baby.
Yes, sorry.
Would you believe, one of the leaders of VEDA. I think you all know VEDA, vestibular.org. Brilliant resource. Emily leads the French version of that. So we've got our French cousin with us, and we're affiliated to VEDA. And I hope, Emily, it's made some kind of sense what we've been discussing tonight. I would be very surprised if a lot of it doesn't apply to French employment as well.
Well, there is different law, but actually for my part, I'm French, but I've lived in London for a long time. And what I was hearing actually amazed me, because that's exactly what happened to me when I got my concussion and then my diagnosis after, which everything that is discussed tonight, I didn't know about it because I was just moving back to England from France. And my employer was clearly a bully. And they were like, oh, if you're not coming back like you were before, we're not going to do part-time or anything. Either you quit or either you come back as before. And I couldn't come back as before. So I just quit my job. And in a way, I've done other things after. So I think I was glad I quit that job. But it's actually great to know that people are protected, and they've got guidance throughout of that, because I really thought when that happened to me that I was really lost and really alone in it, which is also why in France, when Cynthia asked us to do something for French resource, because the VIDA didn't have that, most of the board member, we all have a diagnosis either in triple PD or vestibular disorder, migraine. Most of us, that's actually what we have. And that's what we've built that to help more people.
Yeah, good, brilliant. Well, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
And I'm sure we'll see more of your organisation as well. We're a great believer in, we're all one big balanced community, and everything you face individually, you can bet your life most of us face wherever we live, whatever language we speak. We are part of a very select group, and we've got to fight together to just get heard and make people understand what's going on. So thanks everyone for tonight and sharing. Brilliant questions. Tracy, I don't know what we'd do without you. You're never going to be able to leave the group, I'm afraid. Even when you've not got a balanced condition, we're never going to let you go. Paul, brilliant. I know you've not been well for several months now, but thanks ever so much for coming on tonight and helping ask those questions. Thanks everyone. Yeah, the video will be on the website in a few days' time, so you can sort of look back at what was said if you can't remember all the detail. But great, thanks Tracy. I'm sure many members are going to be in touch, especially when they see the video, there'll be even more. But it's brilliant, and see you all on February the 8th. All take care, and remember, fight for your rights. Come on, let's do it. And if you need help, just shout. That's what we're here for. Thanks everyone.
Thanks
Thank you
again.
very much. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Trace.